Hello, so today I am going to give you a quick tutorial of how to get a city started with SimCity 4 Deluxe Edition. So we're going to go ahead and start with a large city. So this just takes a couple minutes to load sometimes, so we will do our best to get it up and running. Alright, so here we have our nice little city. Let's call this, let's see, Madrid. It's a terrible name because Madrid is not on the ocean. But the goal of what I'm going to show you today is just kind of how to get up and running, and we're going to try to build kind of a well-balanced city here. So something that looks kind of realistic is kind of what we're going to go for. So let's see, where should I start? One of the things about building a city that ends up being pretty important, at least right off the bat, is you want to be thinking a lot about your industrial areas. That's going to be kind of your big selling point for a new city. So if we look around the map, we have to think about, what areas are going to be good for industry. They tend to like to be around water and on flatland. So I'm going to kind of use this little peninsula over here to build up some of my factories. One of the important things to think about is how we're going to handle transportation. So this is going to be my industrial area over here on this peninsula, and I'm going to make this area kind of sort of like my downtown. So right off the bat, I'm going to start and I'm going to make a bridge actually between these two areas. Now this might seem like it's a lot of money to spend, and it is. Let's see. Here we go. So I want to make sure the bridge is tall enough here to allow ferries to go through. That's really important. And we're going to make the Golden Gate Bridge because we're really exciting here. Let's see. All right. So this is going to be kind of my main way of getting between my two kind of important beginning parts of the city. You got to make sure the highways can be a little bit tricky sometimes to get connected properly. All right. So now that we've got this going, we're going to start thinking a little bit more about what we'd like to see here. So we're going to just pull this highway down here. Okay. So when we're thinking about the city, we want to think about a few different types of things. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zone for an industrial area just to get us started here. First, I'm just going to extend this highway out in this territory too. So I will show you kind of how to get started with the city, and also, how to make sure that your city is profitable and making good money for you, because that's important as well in your region. So we're going to go ahead and get started with just some high density industrial zoning. Now this might seem like a lot, but it's actually going to be really important that you have a large industrial zone that's easy to access for all of your commuters. So we're just going to go ahead and make a big plot of industrial land. when you build highways at a diagonal, sometimes it can be a little funky. So I'm going to get started just with some of this. Something that's really important is you want to make sure that you have good access points for your industrial land, having lots of good bridges and roads and on-ramps, off-ramps connected to your highways, and lots of entrances and exits from the city because they're going to export lots of freight. Okay. In this zone, unfortunately, we can't go through the highway here. Alright, so this is going to be the start of our industrial zone. One thing that's really important when you're building industrial is to have fire stations, because otherwise everything will start catching on fire and that will really slow the game down a lot. Next, what I'm going to do is just start thinking about my residential areas as well. So eventually I'm going to build a highway going this way, and this is going to kind of be my commercial district, my downtown area, sort of. But I'm going to get started with just sort of building in, oops, this is interesting. I'm going to get started just by building in an avenue. And this is going to be really at the center of my residential zone. So everything that I put in here is going to be primarily residential. Okay. Let's back a bit. And again, you don't have to focus on making everything perfect. You just want to make sure that you're thinking about some good highway access. Actually, normally in my cities, I don't really do a lot with highways, but highways are a good way, kind of a quick and easy way to get a city started without having to think too much about sort of how you're going to do the roads and all that type of thing, because there are certainly other ways of doing this. Your ideal city takes longer to build, but it would involve more subway networks and that type of thing. But we're not going to get into all of that here in this video. Sometimes you really want to make your roads line up as best you can. It's really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that, because it's kind of annoying when you have to pave over a lot of your streets and turn them into roads and they don't kind of want to work the way that you're expecting them to. And for the most part, I do prefer to turn my streets into roads. I find it to be really helpful. All right. So this is what we've got for our, beginning of our residential area. One thing that's important is you don't want to have zones of residential that are too big, because then people will become unemployed as they try to find their way to their jobs. So I'm actually going to take out a loan, which is a pretty expensive thing to do, but I find sometimes that it's easiest to get yourself working properly when you invest a lot up front in some of your infrastructure. So then I'm going to build this is going to be the beginning of my kind of commercial downtown area. And again, I'm not going to build a lot of this out right now, but this is just kind of so you can see how it will end up working. Again, I don't really want these roads to appear just like this, because I really want to make connections here moving across. Maybe there's a road on the other side too. There is. So this is a little inconvenient. So when you have a street like this, it'll try to prevent you from building on-ramps, which is a bit inconvenient. And then what we want to do, we want to make sure that this land is usable. So we're going to kind of bump it back like this. And as you can see, the little pointed forward arrows are where the buildings are actually going to come in. So we want to make sure that they're actually facing a road. All right, so this is going to be the beginnings of our basic setup, and then we have to think about what buildings do we need to get going. We definitely want to have a power plant, because that's important to power the city. Because these zones aren't connected right now, we're actually going to need to use power lines to do that. It's kind of ugly, but right now it's probably the best option. And I'm going to put in actually a seaport wherever I can sometimes it can be a little tricky to find the right spot. So I'm going to put in a seaport so that my factories will be able to ship out their goods once they've gotten started. So that's another thing that's kind of important. So right now this highway might get kind of clogged, but we'll see. We can always put in tolls and other things if we find that we need them later on. One trick that I tend to have is putting bus stations every couple of blocks, especially in sort of your downtown area, because you'll find that having a good network of buses will really reduce traffic. So this isn't going to be a traffic tutorial, but it's always good to have at least some thoughts about what you're going to do to make sure that your city doesn't get overly congested, because if you have too much congestion in your city, it slows everybody down, kind of like in real life, and it will make your people less willing to drive far distances to get to work, and that can that can actually be crippling to your city as it starts to grow. So we're just trying to be kind of proactive here. Let's see. Some other things that are important to have right away are a hospital, and we'll definitely want to have a school as well, but we want to probably put in a large school for this area. We need some people in the city first before we can do that. So we're going to get started, and we're going to go on fast speed. So you'll see things are a little bit boring at first. And a lot of these initial buildings that come through as requests, I usually just go right ahead and plop them down, because for the most part, they're going to help boost demand and really help get your city up and running. graveyard. We'll put that in shortly. So another thing that we're going to need right around this time is a water pump. We will not be able to grow very much without water. We'll be stuck at low density, and no rich people will want to move in. So I'm going to just put in some water lines, and you'll see, like, it looks like I'm totally blowing the budget right now. That's just a temporary thing. You'll see we'll get better at it as the city expands. You can take on up to $2 million in debt. You don't want to get to that point because then it becomes, very hard to recover. We're already spending several $1,000s a month on our debt payments, and that just has the potential to get worse. But it is okay, I believe, to take on some debt in the early stages. So I'll just give you kind of a zoomed out view, and you can kind of see right off the bat that things are getting going. I'm going to quickly put in a landfill because if we let garbage accumulate everywhere, that doesn't tend to be good for anybody. There we go. Taking care of our landfill. Yep, we just got a notification about the landfill. So now we're back down here, and I'm going to put in an elementary school and a high school, both very important. And we're getting all kinds of crazy budget notifications because it looks like what we're doing right now is just wasteful and dumb, and you might think that I'm crazy, but give this another 10, 15 minutes and we'll have a very well balanced budget, and you'll see us making some pretty good money pretty quickly. So you can see, right now that we've got a lot of demand, kind of as we were talking about, for that sort of dirty industry, and that's pretty typical in the beginning of the game. So you're going to get a lot of poor residents moving in, wanting to have those factories and everything. And if we check, we're going to see a lot of people commuting over this bridge. Yeah, about 2,000 cars and buses a day in total, which is a fair number. It's kind of a lot. So we'll see a lot of growth in factories over in this area. We need another power plant. Running low, so we're actually going to have to take on a bit more debt. We may have to take on, I would say, between $600,000 and $800,000 of debt before we really start seeing a turnaround in the numbers here. But again, that's totally okay, because if we come down here and we look at our our growth figures, we're growing really quickly in residents and in industry, and our income is growing really rapidly as well, and I expect that to continue along. It's kind of fun to watch it all sort of unfold. You can see all of our people where they're commuting to. This highway is going to get really clogged really quickly. So I'm going to take a quick look at my traffic. Actually, there's not a lot of congestion right now, except right here, right at this interchange. But you can see there's about, volume-wise, over 6,000 vehicles traveling every day across that road. And we're running low on water as well. So I'm going to put in another water pump. So this is kind of where we're going to conclude the end of part 1. This has probably been about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to start a part 2 video that'll show you kind of taking the city to the next step.